We are Good Morning New Hampshire, but really now Good Morning up into Maine, Good Morning New England, Good Morning regionally, Good Morning worldwide. Hey Alexa, hey Google. Play the Pulse of NH. Our poll question up on X this morning. It is primary voting day in the state of Maine. And our question is, do you think Graham Plattner will end up being the Democrat nominee for the U.S. Senate? Sure looks that way. And, of course, Maine votes today, and polls, well, I think most of them will be open about 8 p.m. tonight. Other states going as well. Warm, sunny weather continues into this week. As I said, primary days in some states, including Maine, neighboring Maine. We're going to talk a little bit about that with Dean Spiliotis, retired Southern New Hampshire University political science professor, in a moment. And also, were they cheers or jeers at the Knicks game for President Trump last night? And we have a lot going on. J-Dog on the boards. We're also going to be, there's some updates out of the Attorney General's office this morning. We have an update on that, the shooting in Thornton, New Hampshire. Now, the brother of that young college student, I guess they first said she was 20, a 21-year-old shot in the head. Now her younger brother, Attorney General's office has announced they arrested in Thornton. So it was a pretty sad story there. Coming up today as well in the 10 o'clock hour, we're going to hear from the Attorney General's office in studio live. And we're going to be talking about, a lot of things, including different resources and working with prosecutors, law enforcement, highway safety officials, and all that across the state to improve traffic safety and reduce serious crashes. We've seen way too many of these fatal accidents. You'll see the signs up and how many there have been. So we'll be getting an update on that. J-Dog on the boards, and we got a busy Tuesday for you. As I said, that warm, sunny weather continues into the week. Before we get to Dean Spiliotis, Southern New Hampshire University, I was just thinking about the Senate race. We had Chris Pappas on yesterday in New Hampshire before he announced the congressman in the 1st District running for the U.S. Senate. Of course, the big Republicans running in that race as well. John E. Sununu. We haven't heard much on the Republican side in a bit. Former member of Congress, and of course, Scott Brown running as well, Republican in the U.S. Senate primary here. That's going to be a big race. That's a very big race. Probably one of the biggest races we're going to see here in New Hampshire, that U.S. Senate race. But in Maine, wow, what a difference a crossing the bridge makes. You look at this race, you have this long time serving. I mean, she cast the other day in the Senate, Susan Collins cast some record-tying vote. She's been there a long time in the state of Maine. She's, I think, fairly well respected by her colleagues. She's perceived to be a moderate. She's been one of those swing senators over the years when certain votes were needed. She sits on a lot of those high-ranking, as they say in Washington, powerful committees that can bring appropriations home to the district. And but the problem is, I think in Maine, and I'm not sure, she's not viewed as what you'd call a Trump MAGA U.S. senator by any stretch of the imagination. But she's older. She's been there a long time. And we're seeing this. We saw it in some of the primaries where President Trump got involved in the Republican side to unseat a long time serving U.S. senator, a Republican. We're seeing this sort of knee-jerk reaction from voters to look for the populist candidate and then vote out the long-time incumbent. And that's been happening. But in the state of Maine, the wild card is the reality of Graham Plattner. I mean, every time you turn around, there's another outrageous story that's not crazy about him. It's crazy, but it's not like fiction about this candidate. And it doesn't seem to matter. It doesn't seem to matter to Maine voters, especially the more progressive liberal voters. And that's sort of what Maine's been dominated by under the Governor Mills era. So it doesn't seem to matter. I mean, I don't know what plans could come out. What new stories could come out about Graham Plattner as they head to the polls in Maine? This Democrat Senate candidate is, everything that has been, he said on social media or Reddit or web or social media sites he belonged to, his wife, His wife even told the campaign when he was going to run, you got to realize he's got some real bad baggage and dirt here, including like stuff outside of our marriage. And that doesn't seem to matter anymore. But the stuff he had said about women and a lot of things, I mean, just it would disqualify just about anyone, as I said before, to even be elected dog catcher or a school board member. Certainly, if he is a Republican, he'd be chased out of the state of Maine. But he's continued to roll on high polling numbers despite his positions and statements in the past. And, he comes across, I don't even know, he comes across as this quote unquote oyster farmer, but there's even questions about what he says about who he is. But he's served in the military. He comes across as a populist. He is on the younger side compared to Collins. And he rails against Trump. And he's one of these progressive, populist candidates who wants to tear everything up, break the furniture. And that's appealing to Maine voters. And they overlook all the anti-women stuff, the stuff that he has said or posted about women and everything from in a sexual assault, who's to blame, and what he has said about different. I mean, it's very, very beyond sexist. I mean, really kind of over the top stuff. I don't even want to, dignify it by repeating it all. But there's no doubt, in my opinion, that he's going to square off against the incumbent Republican Senator Susan Collins in November. I really think that there's not even a question. And I think that no matter what he has said or done in the past, he gets up there, he rails against Trump, and these Democrat primary or more progressive activist voters love it, and they don't care. They overlook the stuff that he has said or done in his past, and they're going to overlook it. And you heard it here first. He is going to be the nominee. I don't see it changing. The question is going to be, once he becomes the nominee, how does this race take shape? What about independent? Where do most voters look at? They're also having the big governor's stuff up in Maine. Bobby Charles, the Republican likely nominee, and you just heard in our news the Democrats and the governor's race up there. So Maine today, the primary vote. We'll break it down a little bit in a moment with Dean Spiliotis, Southern New Hampshire University, as we get going on this Tuesday morning. Welcome, by the way, to June 9th. We're just about 9:15 a.m. on our network of really fine news talk stations, AM and FM, as well as streaming and beyond. And J-Dog on the boards. J-Dog, we didn't really talk about it. Last night's Knicks game. Thoughts?
The Spurs, they got the win.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a series now, Jack. It was not looking like that for a little while. Now it's a series. It goes to game 4 tomorrow night in the Mecca.
In the Mecca. All right. Tonight, Stanley Cup resumes, right?
Game 4 tonight in Sin City. Can the Vegas Golden Knights go up 3-1, or will the series be tied with the Carolina Hurricanes getting back in it?
It's really a must-win, break the back game tonight for the Canes. I mean, they really have to keep this thing knotted, because if Golden Knights and Tortorella seems to really have that locker room focused, they're fired up. And if they start to play superhuman, watch out. But who would have thought, right? Who would have thought they got rid of Cassidy and brought in Tortorella? Was it after the Olympics? And here you go. All right. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. I'll have some commentary as well this morning. And we're also going to get a business update. Mike Cody, New Hampshire Business Review on the defense industry here in the Granite State. As I said, we have a live Attorney General segment coming up in the 10 o'clock hour. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. Back in a moment.
Sundays at 3 on the Pulse of New Hampshire. The New England College Studios. Now, back to Jack on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
This is a good segue to Dean Spiliotis. I guess I should say, was it emeritus or retired political science professor, Southern New Hampshire University, one of the schools or colleges. Good morning, Dean.
Hey, good morning, Jack.
Is it okay? Did I jump the gun on that?
No, I've been officially retired since the beginning of May.
Do you know what day it is?
So literally, what day it was?
Today.
Today? Today's Tuesday, right?
I quizzed my brother-in-law some mornings he retired. I said, "What day is it?" And he texted this morning. He goes, "It's Saturday."
That's true. I mean, yeah. I mean, I've spent 35 years with the rhythm of an academic year.
Yeah.
So it's going to take some adjustment in the fall, especially in the fall.
Yeah. Well, Dean, we talk about Maine's voting today. They got the big U.S. Senate race, the governor's race, but I want to do a segue, and I think it does shed some light, believe it or not, on the Graham Plattner Democrat, favorability, despite a past that if you flush this through AI, you couldn't come up with a more repugnant candidate towards women in some things, but they seem to overlook it. But I think part of this, Dean, is as we look at our nation's 250th birthday anniversary coming up July 4th, Quinnipiac and other Pew Research show, this is rather striking, that almost 60% of Americans feel that America's best days are behind us, our best years. Only 40% believe they lie ahead. So there's a pessimistic feeling of frustration and things like that. And I think that leads to the populism that we're seeing. I think President Trump took advantage of this, not once, but twice. I think Plattner on the far left side is sort of what you call a populist, break the furniture, Trump's bad and all this stuff. And I just think it's a sign of the times. I may be wrong.
Yeah, no, I mean, I something I had talked about many times with my students, that it really has been for as long as really the last 20 years or so, we've been kind of in this period of flux. And, we have these kinds of periods occasionally in our history. And I hope that, I think it is true that I just hear across the board from people of all ideological stripes, just a general unhappiness with how things are in the country. And I hope we cycle out of that at some point. I think part of it is a function of the social media and the new environment in which we consume information. I think there are a lot of different cross currents that are at play. The impacts of globalization, lasting impacts on our economy and how we produce and consume goods. So I think the polling's pretty accurate. As I said, I hope we cycle out of it. We're all, and what goes along with that is kind of an era of hyper partisanship. So when I talk to Republican voters about Trump, they say, well, we're not crazy about some of his behavior. We wish he kind of handled things differently, but we like his policies, and we'll take anything he does over a president from the other party. And now you're basically hearing the same thing from Plattner voters. The guy's got a lot of red flags, doesn't seem like a great human being, but we've seen polling data that says he can beat Susan Collins, and we want to take the Senate back. And anybody from our party is going to be better than more Republican rule. So, it's across the board.
But the funny thing is, Susan Collins is anything but a Trump Republican in the Senate.
Yeah.
But
right. But they basically are focused more on
just winning the Senate,
just winning control. Right. Putting her. Yeah. I mean, in a way, people like her and Lisa Murkowski and to some extent Rand Paul, they've actually kind of helped Democrats in some instances. But this is all about simply getting to 51 votes in the Senate.
Speaking of retirement, Bernie Sanders is probably the most unhappy person on earth that he's getting older and that he's old now, because the other thing that this poll, Dean Spiliotis, is interesting to talk about. This is not just Pew Research, but Quinnipiac University. Our best days as a nation behind us. And the question, it's worth talking about for a moment, this pessimism, cynicism that, maybe younger people have, or people under 50 years old.
Absolutely.
But Dean, the thing is, we're seeing socialism and socialist mayors in more American cities, not just New York City, but, you look at Burlington, Vermont, or Seattle, Washington. And then you look at, the overt push for socialism, and that America the best days are behind us. It's not working. Do you think that's part of this attraction of the far progressive left side of the political aisle for Democrats to really be almost overt socialists? I've said on my show many times, Dean, that when Bernie Sanders used to be on my show years ago as a senator running for president in New Hampshire, of the country, and then be in New Hampshire, I'd almost be reticent or reluctant to introduce him as the socialist senator from Vermont, because socialist was kind of a criticism, was kind of a low, now
Right.
it's the proud badge of honor, socialist Bernie Sanders. Do you think that plays into
Right.
some of this we're seeing through the polling?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think part of it is that you and I are both old enough to remember the Cold War and kind of, it was us against the Soviet Union and communist China, and even the Vietnam and all of that, the kind of the domino theory about communism spreading throughout the world, Asia, Africa, Central America. So we have a different view of that, I think. And for a lot, again, my experience with my students is still very recent, and a lot of them feel like nothing else is working. They kind of like what some of these democratic socialists have to say about, making the playing field fairer. Basically, the argument is that the capitalist system has built a system that is rigged in favor of elites who keep enriching themselves at the expense of the working class. So all of this stuff sounds good to them in theory, but they're not really schooled on the history of what happened in the Soviet Union and communist China to know why that's so problematic. And you're seeing people like Mondani in New York, the mayor, putting a whole new face on it.
Yep. The other thing is, this democracy doesn't score well in this. But you mentioned history. It's not just not knowing the history of places like the former Soviet Union or Venezuela or Cuba. It's you ask a lot of younger people today, or even people under 50. If you and I, Dean, I don't think in New Hampshire, because I'm not saying this to be complimentary to our home state. I think people here are more informed with civic engagement per capita than other states. But if you and I went to California, New York, and we picked 50 people or 100 people to fill an auditorium somewhere who identified themselves as independent voters, fairly informed, and you and I stood up there and we said, okay, we're going to ask everyone, just hold up your hand if you know the answer. Tell us, give us 90-second summary of D-Day and stop. Just ask them. And a lot of them are going to look at you and probably not even know what D-Day was. They won't even know we just had the anniversary. And then you ask them, Pearl Harbor. Tell us a little bit about what happened at Pearl Harbor. And if you and I went through some of the key benchmark historic moments in this country, I think a lot of people don't even know the history of our country.
Yeah, well, it's a very useful lesson that I learned kind of midway through my years teaching, where I used to make a lot of references, historical references in my lectures and my discussion, and students would be quiet, and it slowly dawned on me that in a lot of instances they just weren't familiar with the references. So I became a lot more careful about kind of explaining the context so that people understood. And that's why they always say history often repeats itself with new generations. I hope we cycle out of this moment, but I fear that it's still a ways off.
I only want to ask this one because of 250th is coming up. I don't want to get back a final question on the main primary and the others.
Sure.
Dean Spiliotis, regular contributor. I don't like to say retired Southern New Hampshire University professor. I think you're going to be, some school's going to snatch you back for a year or two. It's like a pro athlete when they've done like 20 years in the NHL. And then like, I don't know, the Tampa Bay Lightning bring you back for a year. Let me ask
maybe
you.
It'll be like an NFL quarterback who's retired, and they'll talk about maybe bringing me back.
Yeah, because you're a veteran, you know the moves. Hey, let me ask you this. Speaking of history, and I mean this, I look at New Hampshire because I don't know where we're at. I think this November in the midterms is actually going to be a very telling midterm election on where our voters are truly at. Are they still going to vote Democrat for the federal seats and more Republican at the state house? Or are they going to do a blue wave and kind of a rejection vote against Donald Trump and other things in the state, New Hampshire? But my question is, you look at New Hampshire, and I've been here a while, as you know, and the same questions on our history. I wouldn't expect many people out there would know who General John Stark was. But if you just said you moved to New Hampshire, how long have you lived here in a focus group? Oh, I've been here 10 or 12 years, moved here from, I don't know, New York. Okay. Do you like New Hampshire? Love New Hampshire. What do you love about it? Well, we love the fact that our community is relatively safe. Our kids can walk to school. There's always something happening on the weekends. We can go to Boston if we want. We can go north to the mountains. We can go to the ocean. We love New Hampshire. And do you like the state's motto? Live free or die. Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's different. Do you know anything about the meaning of that or where it came from? I guarantee they would have no idea how to even explain what it meant when Stark wrote the letter to his troops in Bennington. I don't even think they'd understand. They couldn't explain it. It's cool. It's cool. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Stark. For several years, I worked with a direct descendant of his, maybe the 10th or 12th generation grandson, same last name, everything. So he used to talk about his family's history. And, Stark famously made that, live free or die comment. But it really became popular in the 50s, in the Cold War. Live free or die, basically an implicit statement against the onset of Soviet communism, communist China, live free or die. Now it's kind of become just sort of a catch-all for kind of libertarianism, do your own thing. That there's if you can't do your own thing, you might as well die. So I think people like it. They probably don't know a lot about its deeper meaning.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so let's go back. Am I right or wrong? I have no doubt at all that not only will Graham Plattner win the Democrat primary for the U.S. Senate today, but he'll end up being the nominee. I know they have something in July where, the state party has to approve it, and there's probably time if he wants to drop out. We know Governor Mills' she's dropped out and suspended her Senate campaign, but she's still on the ballot. I have no doubt it's going to be Plattner and Collins. Do you agree with me?
Absolutely. I think he's going to win comfortably today. The people who vote in the Democratic primary are the most committed partisans. They're the ones who want to take back the Senate. They're focused on the national scene, and they like his populist message. He's very different than who's in college, and they're willing to overlook a lot of the other stuff, at least for now. And I don't think the party will swap him out in the summer. I think, as you mentioned, they technically could, although if there's some cataclysmic thing that we haven't learned about yet, and he's in real trouble if there is at this point, maybe, but I don't think so. I think it's going to be Collins and Plattner in the fall.
It's interesting. All right, Dean, good stuff. I appreciate it. We'll get you in here soon since you have more time, as they say. Thank you, Dean.
That's right. A little more time on my hands. Thanks, Jack.
All right. Yeah, this poll's interesting. It's not shocking to me. This Quinnipiac, Pew Research, they've kind of, Mike Pomp was talking about it in our news or in his show, Morning Information Center this morning, kind of aggravated these polls that are showing about the same result. Now, this, again, if you believe polls, because I've talked about polling today and surveys, it's like, who are they polling? The polls in the last general election, the presidential election, were all wrong, locally and nationally. They were more wrong than right. Some of the bigger outfits like University of New Hampshire and Durham, Andy Smith and his survey center, they're doing surveys now. They call them surveys, not polling, because what they do is the last time he was on defending their poll, it was a poll number on Governor Kelly Ayotte. I said, who are you polling? And what they do is they kind of get a subset of the population, and then they'll get them together, a few hundred people, and they'll do a survey of them. So I don't know if you believe, but again, more than 50% of Americans believe our best days are behind us. Well, look at the news. Not a surprise. Hey, Alexa, Google, play the Pulse of NH. Back in a moment.
107.7 W. You never miss a moment. Good Morning New Hampshire, live from the New England College Studios, home to a new media center where the next generation of journalists are taught to do it right. Now back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, welcome back. John Decker, our own White House correspondent. He was off for a week. I was off for a week. John, I missed you. How are you?
I missed you. It's good to be back at it. The president getting back early this morning to the White House after being at Madison Square Garden last night for Game 3 of the Knicks-Spurs series. And he did not bring the Knicks any luck last night. That series still 2-1 Knicks, and Game 4 is tomorrow night at the Garden.
And, of course, depending on what you read, it's all like in the ears of the beholder. Cheers or jeers, right?
Right. I wasn't there. The pool report said it was mostly booze, but, look, it's a city in which I think you know this quite well. A majority of the residents of the city of New York are Democrats, so not that unexpected.
Well, plus,
in terms of the reaction the president got.
Plus all the security and measures and everything else for a game. Hey, John, I want to talk about the defense. Well, let's talk about this interesting story on the defense side of things when it comes to religion. Take it away.
Mm-hmm. Well, a few weeks ago, back on May the 20th, the Pentagon announced a new policy in which it was essentially saying that the Pentagon would only acknowledge a certain number of religions for the personnel files of servicemen and women. And one of those religions that was not acknowledged was the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS, also known as the Mormons. That really rubbed two Republicans the wrong way. Utah Republican Senators Lee and Curtis. And over the weekend, they had a conversation with both President Trump and Secretary Hegseth. That policy was reversed. The policy was one in which the LDS Church was not acknowledged as a Christian religion. And that certainly rubbed those two senators the wrong way. The president probably felt like this is more trouble than it's worth. Let's reverse the decision. And that's exactly what happened yesterday.
John, I want to switch gears. When you talk with your White House press corps colleagues and you look at these primaries in certain states, today Maine is one of the states having a primary, as you're probably aware, because of a big U.S. Senate race. I'm sure you've covered and interviewed Senator Collins a lot. Mm-hmm. So you know all about Graham Plattner. You've read this stuff. And I have no doubt that he's going to be not only win today, he's going to be the Democrat nominee, no matter what he's texted or posted or what his tattoos have been or what what sites he was part of while he was married. It doesn't seem to matter. He's a populist. He's railing against Trump, and Democrat progressives will kind of forget the Me Too movement and just sort of move beyond that. But when you talk with colleagues, are you surprised that, Plattner's doing this well in the state of Maine among progressive or Democrats? Is it just the environment of, you've seen other primaries where President Trump got involved and endorsed someone and unseated a longtime Senate incumbent who was a Republican? Or does any of this surprise you or not?
Well, here's the thing. This is my read. You're literally closer to the action than I am, literally. But having said that, I feel that Susan Collins is going to be literally cruising to re-election if Graham Plattner is the nominee for Democrats. He is the worst choice. He is the Democratic version of Sharon Engel, who was running for Senate against Harry Reid a few election cycles back, and she got trounced. And I think the same thing's going to happen with Plattner.
Well, John Decker, I'm not in the betting business, and I would probably bet on your wisdom here because it is more of a calm, logical point of view. But I got to tell you, I don't think not you, but people, Maine's politics these days, I got to tell you, it is so crazy what Governor Mills and their taxes and their fiscal mess that they're in. Maine just placed 40, I think it was within the bottom of the barrel in terms of economic development. The state has changed a lot, and the people there, some of these far left progressive voters, as long as he's saying bad things about Trump, I don't think they care if he kidnapped people in his past. I don't think they care. I really don't.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Like I said, you're literally closer to it than I am. That's my read from Washington, D.C., and it's going to be an interesting race. That race could indeed decide who controls the U.S. Senate for the next 2 years.
And we have one here in New Hampshire. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And it may well be, Mr. Decker may be right, that when independent voters in Maine and more rational, logical people look at this, they're going to look at Susan Collins and say, hey, pretty sure bet. We've known her. She's been good to the state of Maine and done a lot. I think she's somewhat analogous, but I'm not going to, people are going to start yelling and screaming if I say this, but you look at Senator Shaheen in New Hampshire, longtime senator. I think Susan Collins, former Senator Judd Gregg, I think she's kind of viewed, I mean, people don't realize, but how long has Senator Collins in Maine been in the Senate? That's almost another story if you look at it. 1997, almost 30 years. Think of that. Susan Collins has been in the U.S. Senate in the state of Maine like almost 30 years. 30 years. One of the longest. And the problem is that people are so down on politics right now, so divisive, so angry, so tear up the other side, break the furniture, name calling, that it might just be her longevity and incumbency instead of working to her advantage, might work to her disadvantage. But one would think that when you contrast her in a mano a mano general, one-on-one election, that she would do fine and not easily, but fairly easily defeat Graham Plattner, given he's kind of like the one candidate that kind of has every pass, flaw, or fault, if that matters. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. I'm going to take a quick break in a moment, but I want to come back and drill down a little bit on this Quinnipiac Pew University poll. And I want to preface this because I don't know if these polls are even close to reflecting reality. But then again, they might be, because if you've been polled lately, when you get a text message, I get them on my phone quite a bit to take part in a survey. All I do is delete, move to trash, delete. I don't click anything. So I don't know. People don't have a wall phone at home anymore. They don't talk on a telephone like the old days. They have these smartphones. I don't know who they're polling, but they do these polls. These are the same ones that said that on the night of the presidential election between Trump and Harris, that we wouldn't know for days, weeks, or months who won that election. Now, of course, in California, they're still counting, right? Sorry, I just had to go there. Come on. But when you look at these polls, and I don't know who they're polling, it is an eye-opening type thing, but does it shock or surprise me that almost in one of the polls, I think it's the Pew Research poll, Quinnipiac University does a lot of polling, each cycle, that almost 60% of Americans do not feel that our brightest days are ahead of us, meaning as we approach our 250th anniversary, birthday, 250 years, that our best days are behind us, not in front of us. And that's sort of a growing trend, especially among younger Americans. I mean, I can't blame them on the one respect. They're getting Social Security taken out of their work checks, and Social Security probably won't even be there for them because we have a debt. We have a debt that no one's even talking about in this country, getting up near $40 trillion. So there's a lot of things to be down about, pessimistic about. Of course, people, when they ask these polls, what country would you rather live in? I always love these stories where people say, well, I just had enough of America, some of these celebrities, so I moved to England. Okay, Ellen, I moved to England. I didn't really look at the forecast when my partner and I, or my wife and I, or my husband and I don't know what her life. I wish her health and happiness. I really do. I thought she used to be a pretty good entertainer. But my point is, they buy their $22 million home in the English countryside, and then they don't like the weather, so they come back. Or these couples that move. Oh, I moved to Portugal. My family and I, we just had enough of America. Moved to Portugal, and after about a year and a half, we moved back to America. We couldn't stand living there. We moved to Spain. Moved to wherever. But we'll see where it goes. But the pessimism and all that. You look at the news. I'm just going to point this out. I mean, how many times does a newscast begin with a positive story? And this is someone who's been in the news media business my whole run. And I remember, looking at newscasts and shaping them because it's a very human, subjective experience. And you might want to tell the people at 60 Minutes that, or CBS, there is a lot of human feelings and political views that go into shaping newscast, and especially national newscast. And look at ABC. They have George Stephanopoulos, who's not even a journalist, sitting there doing the weekend show like he's Tim Russert, and he's a Democrat. His whole history is electing Democrats, Dick Gephardt, Bill Clinton. My point is, partisanship in politics has made some of this pessimism and cynicism far worse, in my opinion. I mean, when is the last time you saw a newscast that had a positive story about our country? A positive story without a negative. I mean, the whole almost 80% of the news is negative. Almost 80. And some would say, well, good news doesn't sell. Bad news sells and get ratings. I mean, I've heard all that. I know that to a point. But when's the last time when you wake? I don't know how some people, if they watch and pay attention to the national news media, that's why people aren't watching TV news anymore, or very few. People want to get their information. They want to go get it and fetch it on smartphones. But if you watch the news every morning, I don't know what people would get out of bed in the morning. Seriously, the news is overwhelmingly negative. So when you pair that with the divisiveness in Congress, the shutdowns, the low approval rating of Congress, and you hear stories about members of Congress who've been in there 20 or 30 years and they're worth $300 million on less than $200,000 a year, and you scratch your head going, I'm supposed to believe in this system? Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an Age. Back on some commentary points about that. Coming up in the 10 o'clock, a great segment with the Attorney General's office on the Pulse of an Age right after this.
This is the Pulse of Now, back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
Just to round out this discussion on the Quinnipiac poll and Pew Research on how 59%, almost 60% of Americans surveyed going into our 250th birthday anniversary celebration in July 4th this year, feel that America's brightest or best days are behind us. It's interesting. You look at this country, and I'm going to sound like an older person when I say this. So, I'm not going to say that when I was younger, used to walk to school through snowstorms with backpacks. But the point is, younger people, I just had a discussion yesterday, speaking of the trades, with one of our colleagues whose husband and family for 30 plus years have had an HVAC business. And she said that they're finding that getting young people interested to work for them is not as much of a challenge as getting a younger person who wants to actually do the work. Now, think about that for a moment. What she was saying is you can get young people interested because they're starting to realize the trades are really not the dirty jobs. They're the best paying, the more secure jobs for a career. We're talking electrical work, plumbing and heating. As I said, the HVAC, but even though a lot of this stuff is leveraging technology, someone has to get up on the ladder and put in the piece of equipment or change the filter in the furnace and get down and dirty in the basement. And she said that a lot of the younger people just want to come in, and the ones they've tried to hire or interview, and they want more than $50 an hour to start is one thing they've been saying. And the other one is they kind of want to make a certain amount of money each year faster than you normally would have the trajectory of working hard, learning the business, maybe being a little bit of an apprentice before you start getting into the six figures. And they kind of want it all up front, and they don't really want to do the physical work. They want to sit there and on a keyboard, and they want to do all the programming stuff or the easier stuff, but they don't want to get on the ladder. And the problem is in our trades here in this Granite State and New England, most of the people that are building stuff, fixing stuff, replacing stuff, installing stuff, many of them are they're older than 55 years old. There's wear and tear in their body. You can't every day go to the work site and all of a sudden get into your 60s and not have from pulled backs of lifting granite or moving bricks or falling off a ladder over the years. You can't do it without the aches and pains. And so it needs the industry needs younger people. But my point is, part of the pessimism and cynicism towards America these days is, look at these stories. Look at Hampton Beach. Now, they've done a good job of shutting this down, but the first hot day, they basically had 50 plus arrests of young people. I just read in St. Augustine, Florida, a week ago on the beach, the police thwarted on the pier one of these, they call them teen mass gatherings, where these teenagers literally come out of the woodwork and they'll go to one place in the summer, of course, on a pier or a beach, and they just take over and they run through the streets and they're just out of control and they love it. And they know that there's too many of them for the police to kind of restore law and order. And that's younger people. And I'm not saying when we were younger, we didn't screw around and do stupid stuff. That's not my point. But you look at the number of younger males in this country, I'm just saying, because I read this study and I would define that as 18 to say 25-year-old. Look how many are actually working full time. And the percentage of those who are not working, who are not going to college, not working full time is a pretty striking number. Look at the military. Now, our enrollments have been slightly up in the last year or two, but the number of qualified candidates to join the military who are in shape physically, mentally to pass the test to become a member of the Army, it's not as easy to think, or the Air Force or the Marines or the Navy or the Coast Guard. And so the number of applicants is it's sort of shrinking. But if you look at different periods of our country, the percentage of young males in particular, before we had more women serving in the military, was quite higher in a percentage. But in this country, less than 1% serve in the military. 340 plus million Americans, less than 1% serve. What about law enforcement and firefighters and first responders and public, that front line of public safety? How many young people are going down to the towns they grew up in and saying to the police department, hey, I'd like to go through, become a cadet and go through the academy, become a police officer in the town I grew up in, or an EMT or a firefighter. So the cynicism in America, the pessimism in America, doesn't really surprise me. I think how do I put this? I think the entitlement attitude in this country has permeated to a point where people expect it. They want this, they expect theirs, they want this fast, they want this quick. The old days of working really hard for something and maybe living in a home that isn't quite everything you want and being a little bit frugal until you have more money over time. I think there's this feeling like we want it all now. We want it all now. Some commentary on why the morale of America might be a little soft going into the 250th anniversary. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Got a good Attorney General segment coming up live, and then some more business news, 10 o'clock hour right around the corner.